We're gathered here at the Seattle Center, one of our city's great civic spaces. And of course, we are also here on the traditional and unceded land of the Coast Salish peoples. We honor their history, their struggles, and their stewardship of this land, past and present and future. And we honor them also through our actions, by taking seriously our collective responsibility to this land, to this city, to the natural world, to each other, and to future generations. So we're here today to complete and also to celebrate the transition process that we began in December when I was still the mayor-elect. And it is wonderful to see so many people here today. I am so grateful for all of your work. Last year, I campaigned on a big vision: affordability, social housing, childcare, homelessness, and much more. But more than any particular issue, my campaign promised a different relationship between our city government and its constituents. It promised a fuller conception of democracy and participation based on an appreciation that with all of you is where the real knowledge lies about what our communities need, and also where the real power lies to make change that endures. That the hard things cannot be just handed down from above. To be successful, they have to be fought for and won and sustained from below. So when I decided to do my transition process a little differently, to put my transition team to work, recruiting and listening to a much larger circle of people, a much larger circle of advisors, I actually wasn't sure what would happen. And what happened is that you all came through in a big way. The people in this room represent just some of the over 1,500 people who have lent their expertise and their creativity and their brilliance to this work over the past 2.5 months. And I am beyond grateful for your time and your dedication, and also for your faith in me and in my administration that this process actually is a good use of your time. So now here we are. Today marks the end of our transition process, but it's not the end of our work together. And my pledge to all of you is that I will take the the recommendations that come out of this process very seriously. They will not be put on a shelf to gather dust. My administration will be using your recommendations as we build out our work plan for this year and for the next 4 years. Of course, you know that we won't get everything done immediately. And I'm sure there will be some things that we can't do and some things that we decide not to do. But it is my hope and my commitment to you that at the end of 4 years, we should all be able to look back at these recommendations and at what my administration has accomplished with your help and pressure, because we will continue to need your help and pressure. And it should be obvious that we have taken the voices of the community that are embodied in these recommendations, and we have followed through, and we have put them into action in a way that people can see and feel in their daily lives. And as you know, we have already gotten started. So today is actually my 55th day as your mayor. That is time that went by very quickly and also very slowly. It's very strange. So since the beginning of this year, we have taken new actions to protect our immigrant and refugee communities from ICE and federal overreach. On homelessness, we have taken action to expedite the expansion of emergency housing and shelter, and you'll be seeing a lot more on that in the next few weeks. Our Seattle Department of Transportation is getting prepared to paint some bus lanes on Denny Way. And after a hard few years for our public transit system coming out of the pandemic, we are going to be working on multiple fronts to achieve irresistibly good public transit in Seattle and across our region. And we've conducted a renter survey with thousands of respondents that will inform new legislation to lower costs and create more stability for renters. There are many more wheels turning behind the scenes. And now with these recommendations in hand, you can expect to see our work on all these issues accelerate in the months ahead, because this is your city. So with that, I'm going to sit down here in the front row, and I'm going to listen to what our transition team has to say. Thank you very much.
To walk us through the transition process and the work completed to date, Please welcome Transition Director Andrés Mantilla.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Mayor. I am so honored and thrilled to be here, starting this vision in November and December, and working with so many great partners, so many great community members. Before we talk about the transition process, want to give a few thank yous. First and foremost, thank you to our Seattle Center staff for helping us put on this event today. Thank you to our Seattle Channel colleagues for streaming. This is also going out on Seattle Channel right now. And thank you to the Uncommon Bridges team who helped support and staff each of these policy work groups and helped staff logistics and made this a reality. So thank you, Uncommon Bridges team. Each of you should have an agenda. On that agenda, and then also throughout the presentation behind me, you will see a QR code. That QR code, you can follow that QR code to see the full set of summary recommendations. Through this process, working with the co-leads, working with the over 1,500 members that we engaged, and then working through the co-chairs, we have put together about 30-page document that you will be able to find if you follow that QR code that summarizes all the recommendations and starts to bring forward some of the key recommendations and early wins, as well as some of the voices from the community. But that is just a snapshot of the feedback that we got. As I mentioned, we engaged over 1,500 people, and that meant thousands of documents, interviews, survey response, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram posts, town hall meetings. So our team is putting that all together in a package that can then be transmitted to the mayor's office so that they can continue to not just see what's in the summary packet, but to see the kind of holistic nature of the recommendations. So this transition process, as the mayor mentioned, started in December. With community, we identified 8 policy areas, kind of spanning a whole host of policy priorities. And through that, we worked through 4 co-chairs. We're going to hear from 3 of the co-chairs today, and then a series of co-leads. And those co-leads were tasked with not just coming to regular meetings, but really kind of going out into community and making this transition more participatory. And through that, and all the outreach through town halls, starting with a transition kickoff meeting, then doing about 2 to 2.5 months of deep engagement, having a transition midpoint check-in where we were looking at what were some of the emerging themes that were coming forward, and then that work to kind of convert those themes into some sort of actionable recommendation that we did in February to this point has been such a collaborative effort. So I just want to thank all of you for your participation, for your trust in trying something new and different, and I'm very excited to get going on the presentations. I will just mention that at the back of your packet, when you see that online, there is a set of cross-cutting themes. Because although these policy areas did their engagement kind of individually with their teams, we know the nature of these recommendations and early wins are cross-cutting, they're intersectional, and they need to work together. So please take a look at that as you're reviewing to see how all of this fits together. Today, we're gonna have our co-chairs come up here next, but we're gonna hear from our different co-leads, and they're gonna review the engagement, and then they're gonna look at the priority recommendations and early wins. So thank you so much for your participation, and look forward to diving in.
We will now begin our policy deep dives. To open session 1 on housing, shelter, and services, please welcome co-chair Tiffany McCoy.
Thank you, Andrés, and thank you, Mayor Wilson. It has been a pleasure serving as a co-chair for this transition process. As you heard earlier, this approach was new, participatory, and we are excited to share the results. I'm here to introduce the 2 upcoming discussions and policy work groups for housing affordability and community needs, and then our student and our youth advisors. Seattle voters continue to show strong support for housing, whether it's voting overwhelmingly to re-up the housing levy or voting for creation of a social housing developer and then funding it. Throughout the transition, we heard clearly, housing is the foundation of safety, health, and economic stability. Our work now is to accelerate social housing, deeply affordable housing, shelter, and workforce housing while pairing it with the services that make housing stick. You will hear more from our co-leads about early wins and recommendations. For the Student and Youth Advisor panel, youth voices during the transition were clear. After-school programs, mentorship, and safe third places keep young people connected and supported. When we invest in young people, we reduce violence, we strengthen families, and we build the next generation of civic leaders. You will hear more from our wonderful student and youth co-leads here shortly.
Presenting key findings on housing affordability and community needs, here is co-lead John Scholes.
Well, good morning, everybody. We've always been asked to go first. I feel a little picked on. In each one of these report outs, we are first. And I want to acknowledge my co-lead, Colleen Echohawk, the CEO of Community Roots Housing, who is not able to be here today. She, if you've read, is trying to make her way back from Mexico. I'm flying solo because she can't fly, but I was talking to her last night. She's doing well, and we're sending positive vibes to her for a safe return of her and her family back home here. I want to acknowledge, and you can see their names on the second page of the packet, the members of our policy area, Kate, Albertus, Gregory, Allison, Nikita, and a big thanks to Liza and Skylar from Uncommon Bridges for their great support. And I'd commend Mayor Wilson and her team for the way in which this transition committee and the work was conducted. I've been around a number of these, and it's often the case that there's 30 or 40 folks in the community that are asked to give their best thinking to a set of recommendations, and they're sort of locked in a room and told to come up with some recommendations for the new mayor or the new executive. And this process was very different. We were asked to go out and listen and engage with a lot of other smart individuals, engaged individuals in our community, and I commend the mayor for the design of this process. At a time when trust in government is about as low as it's ever been, I think it's processes like these where we go out and listen, bring back information, and have a mayor that's committed to implementation. That's how we rebuild trust and have further engagement in this important work. So a great job by the team and Uncommon Bridges for all the work that went into this. I'm not going to lie, I'm glad we're done. I'm glad this is the final meeting, but it was a terrific endeavor. We had some complex and diverse issues to tackle. Our group was focused on housing affordability and supply, homelessness and stability, childcare and families, equitable development and basic needs, food access, and revenue and investment. So 6 very straightforward and easy topics. And I would say it's a struggle to some degree of sort of trying to draw some common themes from the outreach we did, which included a series of roundtables, one-on-one interviews, smaller focus groups, and we also tried to leverage some of the existing surveys and other work that had already been done. We didn't feel like there was an imperative to go out and recreate the wheel if there had been some very healthy and robust recent input and surveys done in these areas, so we relied on that as well. And I think some of the common themes that we heard was there's a lot of pressure in each of these areas right now. There's fragility, it's precarious, whether it's about homelessness or food access or childcare. And we see the headlines around these issues each and every day in our community, and I think can appreciate how fragile each of these areas are right now, and the pressures on the folks that are doing the work today, that are providing those services, that are running housing buildings, or the individuals that are seeking access to these services and supports. So that is a common theme I want to lift up. Another area is that the city is doing good work in each of these areas, but there's an opportunity to optimize and draw more efficiency to deliver more benefit and more abundance in each of these areas. So that was another common theme that we heard, where the city is currently in the position of providing service or taking a lead role. There's opportunities to optimize. And then in some cases, city rules, regulation, red tape that at one point may have made some sense is getting in the way of further progress, of others that are looking to deliver more supply, more access in each of these areas. And so the city should look at ways to get out of the way and reduce some of those hurdles. And then another key theme is that we need more partners, and there's an opportunity for the city to signal a bias toward action and abundance in each of these areas to draw more people in that can help provide more access, more abundance, more investment in each of these areas. That the signaling and the optics of abundance and a bias for action coming from the city and this administration will be important to drawing others into each of these areas. And then as far as a quick win and a critical recommendation, we wholeheartedly endorse the mayor's commitment and desire to produce and bring to bear 500 units of shelter within our community within the first 6 months of her administration. We have 4,000 people sleeping on the streets. 4,000 people sleeping on the streets of our city each and every night. That's unacceptable. We should never normalize that. And there's much we can do with a sense of urgency and focus, additional partners, yes, additional investment to bring those folks inside. And we have to do that if we're going to be successful in meeting a number of the other needs that were a focus area of our work. We have to bring people inside first. It starts there. So we see that as a critical and early action and early win, and we are behind this mayor and this administration in doing just that. So thanks for the opportunity to participate. On behalf of Colleen and myself, look forward to hearing the other reports. Thank you, Mayor, for your leadership, and to the team for this great work.
To discuss the needs of our city's next generation, please welcome our student and youth advisors, Falit-Baiamonte and Russell Mcquarrie-Means.
We had a unique task. It was summarizing every youth's opinions in Seattle. We are ranged from all around Seattle, Leo in north, myself, a block north of the border. But
on the south side.
South side of the border, I should preface. I basically live in White Center. It's great. But we touch on every other committees. We have heard the same things. I'm confident that we will be parroting some of the ones you heard earlier and some you will hear after us. But to get us started, we have to focus on education. Youth and education go together hand in hand. We spend 18 to 22 years of our lives, unless we want to go get a PhD, in our school system. So no wonder it's the first thing we focused on. Throughout this, we wanted to focus on not just the standard college pathway. College isn't for everyone, and we need our trades now more than ever. So I've sat down with many people like Chris Reichel, our state superintendent, to try to figure out ways to increase funding for our CTE programs through our college system, through South Seattle College, through the Georgetown and West Seattle campuses. Furthermore, FAFSA. So many of our people, I'm on FAFSA, love FAFSA, great program. So many people find it confusing. We don't entirely know how to when we're entering our senior year of high school. We're shoved into adulthood without little to no information. We need to have this information be more accessible to our multilingual communities in our school system, and we are pushing the mayor to work with Seattle Public Schools to increase funding for more eyes in multiple languages. Leo, would you like to?
Yeah, moving to civic power. I'm the youngest person on this team. I'm the only high schooler on the team. Often I feel high school voices are not, the most, listened to. So I think some of the early wins we could get with making sure that, high schoolers are heard, and, every, young person is fund and compensate youth-led sessions facilitated by trusted communities. So it doesn't have to be the government, running it, but just students being paid to share their opinions. Another thing is consider a shift in the Seattle Youth Commission to a co-governance, which would make it so more diverse opinions are expressed. We could host recurring school-based assemblies at City Hall, where so students could go directly to the council and to the mayor to express their opinions. We could also upgrade the Youth Connector and the Next Move platform and improve city website navigation for youth. Most youth, I know I don't know how to, navigate seattle.gov. It's a pretty confusing site. So I think upgrading that itself could be helpful for sure. As I said before, youth just, especially high schoolers, we can't vote. We don't have, money much. So making new ways for youth to be able to get their opinions heard is something that I think would be important. Moving on to the next one is safety and trust. Like 90% of the people we talk about their fear around surveillance for their community. So that was one of the main ones. Along with that, we heard prioritizing non-police safety, including care teams, social workers, right, thank you. Glasses are messed up. And establish transparent feedback and loops showing how youth input changes policy. Some early wins for that is publish youth-accessible guidance on rights related to ICE and protest, increase funding for school-based mental health and non-police crisis response teams, hold youth forums on safety, technology, and AI use in education and transit, and review and publicly report on surveillance tools impacting schools and youth, with the goal of removing surveillance cameras is something that we heard consistently among youth in Seattle.
Moving on, transportation. It was it was the number one thing on Mayor Wilson's campaign. We heard from our youth consistently that they are taking buses that come every 30 minutes to get to school. I am talking about the 22 on the way to Chief South and Denny Middle School. We have heard from students that will be 30 minutes late if they miss their bus. Or we see the constant plaguing of ghost buses in the South End, as well as South Park with the 60, the 128, for these students to get to class on time. We are pushing the mayor to direct more funding for buses around our school system, so we could guarantee our students make it to school on time, so they could better learn and contribute to society later in life. Affordability in housing. Many of our college students are renters. They're renting for the first time. They're kind of shoved out in there without a lot of information. I know I barely have any information on how to rent a house. I don't know how to rent an apartment. Other than the guide that I've read to listen to our students more, to understand what they came from, the guide that is on the back of many leases in Seattle, that is the only story I have. And why is it at the back of a PDF? That is my question. We are pushing the mayor's office to direct more funding for printing a physical copy of a renter's handbook to be handed out to renters when they sign that lease.
And to students in high school.
And students in high school, we're also pushing it so for an Adulting 101 class, I heard that term used so many times among our youth. We have, I think at every listening session, we heard for people calling for an Adulting 101 class, and I love that terminology.
Labor rights.
Labor rights alongside of it. This goes over how to pay taxes, how to sign a lease, understanding your rights, what it is to vote, and where your votes actually go to. Yeah. Leo, would you like to close it?
Yeah, just about the transportation, I got to call out the 65 bus. I take that every day, just had to call it out. Goes by Nathan Hale. Right, okay, so final one we have here is mental health and well-being. This is something students have been asking for consistently. This is something past administrations have seemed to ignore. So we are hoping for early wins is to ensure clear trauma-informed communication regarding ICE and activity in the federal enforcement, address school-based trauma through fully funded mental health supports. It's something that's close to me, this is close to every student, something we've been asking for years on end that we've been not able to get. We are at a point where, mental health counselors are like one counselor to over 1,500 students, 1,500 students, which is unacceptable and does not meet the nationally recommended counselor to student ratio. Increase city investments in youth serving mental health providers, crisis stabilization partners, and third spaces, and pilot peer mental health ambassadors as well. Also, just search for ways through restorative justice and non-violent ways to increase safety around our schools. Can I add, Russell?
Nope, that's perfect.
Thank you again, and thank you, Mayor Wilson, for pointing us to your team.
Next, please welcome Co-Chair Karen Estevanen to open Session 2, the Affordability Agenda.
Good morning. Good morning, people of Seattle. It's great to be here. My name is Karen Estevanen. I use she, her pronouns. It's been an honor to be a co-chair on this transition team, and so I want to again thank Mayor Wilson and her team and the transition team and all of the co-leads and everyone in this room and many others that participated in this process. I said something early on in this process that this really felt different than other transition teams that I've been on. It was not symbolic in any way, as people have said here. It's been a lot of work, and it was very genuine and authentic. And the posters and all the information, like Andrés said, really is a snapshot. There's so much information and heartfelt stories and things that people desire and want for our city. And so that was really uplifting to be part of this whole process. Leo and Russell, you all are a hard act to follow. I'm really inspired by the youth right now. And so anyway, this has been great to be here. I am here to talk about the transition recommendations for mobility and livability, and that includes economic development and workers' rights, as well as transition and environment and arts, culture, and creative economy. And I'm going to sort of go through all of them, and then you'll hear from all of the amazing co-leads that will go into some of the wins and some of the details. So the transition made clear from economic development and workers' rights that affordability and good economic development is not just rent, it's wages, it's childcare, transportation, and food, and a good job. One job should be enough. Thank you, Unite Here, for that. And it should also protect workers and make it easier for small businesses to thrive, to really have a thriving economy in our city. So you will hear from Corina Yballa, our wonderful co-lead, about a proposed early wins and recommendations to move us more towards a just and equitable future in regards to economic development and workers' rights. Then you will hear from Shemona Moreno and Anna Zivarts about transportation and environment. And throughout the transition in this category, we heard a lot that mobility is not just about moving people. It's also about access to opportunity, reliable transit, safe sidewalks, accessible crossings, and connected bike networks determine whether residents can get to jobs, school, childcare, and healthcare. Climate leadership must go hand in hand with cost of living relief. Electrification, green infrastructure, and clean air strategies should reduce household energy burdens and improve public health, especially in communities disproportionately impacted by pollution. And finally, within our framework of livability, we need art and culture and a creative economy. You will hear from Randy Engstrom and Ben Hunter, and this transition team affirmed that arts and culture are not just extras. They are economic drivers and anchors of belonging. Transition feedback emphasized that early exposure to creative careers, mentorship, and arts pathways empowers young people, builds confidence, and strengthens the future workforce in the creative economy. Supporting arts and culture is not optional. It is central to a safe, equitable, and thriving city. Thank you, and with that, I think Corina is up next.
To present recommendations on economic development and workers' rights, please welcome co-lead Corina Yballa.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Corina Yballa. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm the political director at MLK Labor, Seattle's largest labor organization representing 150 unions and 100,000 workers. I was honored to lead the Economic Development and Workers' Rights Policy area on Mayor Wilson's transition team. I want to thank my co-lead, Richard DeSam Lazaro, who couldn't be here with us here today, as well as our team, Jeannie, Arif, Toshiko, Joe, and Terrence, along with co-chairs Karen and Quinn for their contributions to our findings. Over the course of the last few months, our team engaged with stakeholders across Seattle's economy. We spoke with rank-and-file workers, small businesses, union leaders, governmental entities, and tech startups. And across these parties, it became clear that we need to build an economy that works for both workers and businesses. When we asked the people of Seattle what kind of economy they want, the answer was really simple. They want an economy where workers are treated fairly, where small businesses can grow, where public dollars reward good faith actors, and where economic growth translates into real stability for families to work, play, and thrive in the city of Seattle. And they were clear about something else that our group members seem to know intuitively. Strong labor standards and a healthy business environment with real stake in the future of our city are not in conflict. They depend on each other. Our aim must be to strengthen the entire ecosystem because economic development does not exist in isolation. It's connected to housing affordability, to public safety, to talent retention and neighborhood vitality. If workers can't afford to live here, businesses struggle to hire, and if small businesses can't navigate city systems, innovation stalls. If enforcement is inconsistent, responsible employers who value their workers are undercut. So the question isn't whether we protect workers or support businesses. The question is whether we're willing to align our systems to do both, intentionally and consistently. Which brings us to this moment of opportunity. Seattle has some of the strongest labor protections nationwide because of the advocacy of workers and their unions, and we've passed ordinances that keep workers protected on the job, and our outreach infrastructure often educates businesses before violations can even occur. That leadership matters, but passing policy isn't enough. Enforcement must be real and sufficiently resourced, partnership must be ongoing, and support must be practical. At the same time, small businesses, which add so much life and character to our city, especially women, minority, and community-owned businesses, need more than startup encouragement. They need life cycle support. Support when they launch, when they grow, when they face rising costs, and when they transition ownership. Right now, engaging with City Hall feels complex, and because of that, opportunities for workers and businesses to solve issues are narrow. And when labor and businesses are engaged separately, friction increases. But if they're brought together intentionally, we come out stronger with solutions that work for everyone. Our main recommendation to strengthen Seattle's economy is this: develop strong partnerships with labor unions throughout the city while providing life cycle support for small WMBE and community-owned businesses. Not as parallel tracks or as competing priorities, but as a unified economic strategy. Because when labor is at the table early, workforce pipelines strengthen. When small businesses have predictable support, neighborhoods stabilize. And when enforcement is credible and systems are navigable, trust increases. And that's how we create stability for workers and predictability for employers simultaneously. That's how we build an economy that works for all of us. And here's where we begin with an early win. We must regularly convene small businesses and workers together to pair well-intended policy designs with the reality of day-to-day operations. Not as a one-time listening session or only when there's a crisis, but as a standing practice, because policy works best when it reflects lived experience and because unintended consequences are avoidable when we design together. and because trust grows when people solve problems side by side. That's how we move from tension to partnership, and a strong economy is one where workers are protected, businesses can grow, and public investment rewards responsibility. Our strategy to make Seattle's economy work for its people starts with partnership and with bringing workers and businesses to the same table. Thank you to Mayor Wilson for your leadership. Thank you to the Uncommon Bridges team for your work on this transition. And thank you for your time.
Discussing the future of transit and sustainability, please welcome Transportation and Environment co-leads Shemona Moreno and Anna Zivarts.
Hello. Oh my God, this is incredibly nerve-wracking. I'm so sorry. First, yes, my name is Shemona Moreno. I'm the executive director at 350 Seattle. I use she, her pronouns.
Anna Zivarts with the Non-Drivers Alliance.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you so much, Mayor Wilson, for selecting us as co-leads and giving us this opportunity. I also just want to thank our policy members, Paulina Lopez, Lowell Bander, Gordon Paddleford, Lindsay Goes Behind, and Lee Lambert. Thank you so much for working with us, and thank you to hundreds of people that we talked to and collecting all of their information. We had too easy transportation environment, just like lumped together, no big deal. Coming together and talking about all of the things that we wanted to see this administration accomplish. And I think the biggest thing, across all the conversations that we had talked with people, I just wanted to note, the biggest ones is just a lot of the things that we were looking to ask questions about, we already know the answers. We already have the plans, we already have the people and the communities ready to do the work, and what is needed is for an administration that's willing to listen, an administration that's willing to take action. And so that is where we heard a lot of our community kind of lifting up that piece. I think a lot of us are really worried, this is our shared home, so we need to think about our shared air, our shared water, our shared environment, and to make sure that we can afford to still be here in this city and then create the beauty around it. So for our group, I more come from the environment side, and Anna is bringing a lot more of the transportation side. So for environment, a lot of the biggest, one of the recommendations out of many that I wanted to lift up is that we prioritize affordable clean energy, climate resilience, and the decarbonization for vulnerable communities, and that we start with our low frontline communities, overburdened communities, those that are often left behind and not prioritized. And like I said, we have a lot of these plans already, and we have a lot of smart people who are willing to put in the work and the time. And so the other kind of thing that we wanted to uplift with that is that we also build trust again with these this administration, and we see the opportunities before us instead of moving in this way that is around scarcity and fear, but that we actually take bold action and also accountability for the fact that we're nowhere near meeting a lot of our goals, and we should name that, find a way to work on it, and move forward to what you said before is a bias for action. And so we have several early wins in our large topic, but I think one I wanted to lift up that is around publishing polluter data, investing in nonprofit clean energy upgrades, expanding community solar, and upgrading public buildings. There's a lot we can do. I know for a fact that 350 Seattle's been working on these campaigns for several years, and we're willing to do more work in the years to come.
Yes.
So.
Awesome. Thanks, Shemona. One of the best parts of this is getting to work with you and get to know you better, so that's been a joy for me. I also just want to shout out to how many folks reached out and were so excited to engage in this process, and that amount of excitement, I think, is something that we can hopefully channel into making this city work better for all of us, so that was exciting for me. So I'm going to touch on a few of the transportation pieces here, because that's sort of my focus area. First of all, just loved hearing from the youth, too, about the need for for more reliable bus service. I think nothing is more frustrating than waiting for a bus that doesn't show up, or a bus that came, 2 minutes early and you missed it, and then you're waiting in the rain, in the cold, whatever. And so just making sure that that transit system can get us where we need to go, because we have the tools to make the city work really well for everyone, including those of us who don't have the ability or privilege to drive. And so really, taking this opportunity to start to make some of those changes. Going back to what Shemona was saying around, we have these targets, we have these plans, and we need to be honest with when we're not meeting them and when we're continuing sort of with status quo projects. And so one of the recommendations that I want to really highlight is a need to think about we have these climate goals to reduce greenhouse gases, to reduce vehicle miles traveled, for mode shift, and these are like 2035 goals. They're so soon, they're 2030 goals, and we're not anywhere close to meeting them. And so being real about that, and then figuring out what steps we need to take as a city to start to make those. And part of that is our transportation policies, but a lot of it is also land use and housing, making sure that we have the affordable housing close enough to where people need to be, to their jobs, to their schools, right? And also the piece of, making sure the services exist in our communities, getting those grocery stores in the South End, right? Up in Lake City Way. Yes. The other piece I want to highlight is that getting to transit, making sure that those pathways are accessible. And if you're someone with a disability, having a missing sidewalk, having a missing curb ramp, having unsafe crossings, and really for all of us, right, those are barriers. And so doing the work we need to do as a city to make sure that those pieces are connected and accessible. 50% of the sidewalks in Seattle are either missing or too torn up to be usable, right, for people in wheelchairs. And so it's a huge lift. We started the process before, but really continuing that process to make sure that we have the funding and a long-term plan to making sure that every address in our city can be reached in an accessible way. I think that's possible. I finally want to just add one, and poke me because I can't see the time, but I want to add one piece around expanding our park space and creating more opportunities. I think it's important for us to do that. And one really great example is Brook Park up in Northgate, where in the Lake City Way area, where we took some street right away and put in a basketball court to allow community to come together and have that access. And so doing that more through the city, figuring out where we have public space, perhaps roads that can be expanded and that use can be expanded to bring community together. So that's it. Anything else?
No.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Speaking on creative economy, please welcome Arts, Culture, and Creative Economy co-leads Randy Engstrom and Ben Hunter.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Benjamin Hunter. I'm the artistic director for Northwest Folklife that exists on this lovely campus here. And my partner and colleague, Randy Engstrom, who you all probably know was the director of arts and culture for the city and now is the primary for Third Way Creative. Thank you all for being here. A big thank you to our team, Jesse and Amy and Michael and Edwin and Elishaba for helping guide this process. It really was an honor to work with such a dynamic team and engage in really, really good conversations about how we were going to do this, the things that we wanted to accomplish, the people that we wanted to communicate with and connect with, and how we wanted to make effectively the biggest splash we could here. It's really great to be invited to the table on this transition team in recognition, as Karen said, that arts is not a nice to have, it's a need to have. And it undergirds so much of the systems that exist in this city on a day-to-day basis. Also, a big thank you to the Uncommon Bridges team, Andrés and Marisol, for their ushering of this process, and of course, Mayor's team for having us. And lastly, just a big thank you to the community for showing up. We touched over 1,000 folks. We had weekly sessions at Estelita's library. We had a town hall that was sold out, and I see many faces in the audience that showed up to all of those things each and every time. So just, again, underscoring how important arts is and how much it means to people that they will show up time and time again to make sure that they're advocating for arts, culture, and creative economy in this city. Early on in the conversation, one of the things that, as we were compiling a list of all the things that we wanted to discuss, we realized that we really needed to trim it down into some three major focuses. And so and through our conversations with community, we were able to narrow that down to affordability, culture, and integration. So as we discuss the recommendations and the early wins, we're gonna get into that, and I'll invite Randy to start with that conversation.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you all for being here. How you guys doing?
How are you doing?
Yeah, I want to just appreciate the work of all of the other transition co-leads up here. Every team worked incredibly hard, and we are all volunteers. And I think that it's really an incredible opportunity and privilege to be able to be at these tables. I really want to thank Mayor Wilson for the opportunity to see the cultural ecosystem for what it is, a driver of our cultural life, and a real foundation of our civic ecosystem. We believe it's critical infrastructure. We don't think that it's decorations for the window. We think that it's how we create jobs, it's how we create belonging, it's how we create safety, it's how we keep our kids in school, it's how we prepare for the workforce of the future. So the engagement process was pretty vast, and I think because we had an opportunity to be at this table, we took that really seriously. And to a person, everyone on the transition team reached out to their networks. We did a survey that reached over 1,000 people. We did about 85 one-on-one conversations. We met with the Arts Commission, the Music Commission, the Film Commission, the Seattle Center resident organizations, the Washington Music and Nightlife Association. We tried to cover as many bases as we could, the Arts CEO Roundtable, regional board chairs, local funders. We wanted to have every voice in the room to tell the best and most complete story that we could. We held the drop-in sessions, as Ben mentioned. We were really humbled that we sold out a 250-person town hall in 4 days. And we also looked at like a dozen previous studies and reports that were done about the cultural and creative economy and arts ecosystems here in our region. And when we did that analysis and we looked at the recommendations and the synthesis from what we heard from all of you, they kind of matched perfectly. Which is, there's two reasons why there's 3 buckets and our poster looks a little bit lighter than the others. One is that we heard very, very consistent feedback. Not just consistent with each other today, consistent with what we've heard for the last 15 years. The other, and shout out to Michael Greer, is that if we want the city to take and advance any of the recommendations that we have to focus. We cannot give them a list of 100 things. We have to give them a list of a couple that are actually doable in a reasonable timeline and that can be accomplished. So that's what we set out to do. I will assure you there is far more information than either what's in these packets or what's on that poster board, and if you want to talk about it, Ben and I are available. We have a vast Google Drive we invite you to explore. I also want to just acknowledge that we did a lot of collaborating with the Civic Narrative team. Civic Narrative was a huge theme that came up across all of our conversations. Also with the Economic Development team, thank you, Arif. We were able to do a couple of creator economy symposiums that helped inform this work. And the youth were with us through a bunch of our conversations, and we also did a really interesting gathering with a group of Nova High School students that was very informative. I'll talk a little bit about the top thing that we heard, which is also the top thing we've heard for 15 years, which is affordability. It's about resources. We know culture can drive a city, but only if we can sustain it. And so affordability, yes, looks like resources, it looks like grants, it looks like funding, it also looks like access to finance, it also looks like things like a municipal bank. There's a lot of innovative tools that exist that haven't traditionally been used, and we're not looking comprehensively at how to support the full ecosystem. It's true that nonprofits, individual artists, for-profit businesses, and film sets require different interventions and policies, but all of them are important and all of them are part of this ecosystem. And we can access and develop the tools necessary to resource what we need, but we need access to resources. Resources is not just money in the door, but also our time. We heard from John and the housing folks. There's a lot of process. There's a lot of red tape. We make people work really, really hard to get to the things that we want them to do. So if we could shift from a culture of regulation to a culture of cultivation, where we make it easier to do the things that we say we want to have happen, we will see a lot more things happen, whether that's building more housing or seeing more events in our streets and our parks or activating our storefronts. Sorry for that. And I think resources is also, there's physical infrastructure, there's knowledge infrastructure, and there's economic infrastructure. Economic is the resources, physical is the spaces, knowledge is that workforce development piece. How are we training people to get access to the jobs that can give them that one wage that we heard the economic development team talk about? How can we prepare people for the economy not of today but of tomorrow? Because we know that the creative economy is actually going to be a driver, especially with the rise of AI and other interventions. There's a lot more than that, but I'll leave affordability there. We're going to come back to it. You'll see it in our recommendations. But I'm going to let Ben talk a little bit about culture and civic narrative.
Thank you, Randy. I felt like dude in Key and Peele, like standing behind you, like ready to come up and drop the real talk. But in all truth, you know, I think when we talk about culture, there was a very palpable energy in the room with all these conversations that we've had. As Randy mentioned, you know, we've had these conversations for 15 years, and we've been saying these things for 15 years. And in so many ways and in so many examples, arts and culture is the lifeblood of this city, of many cities here and around the world, and that we have neglected what arts and culture contributes to this city and to this region and to this state and to our society in general, can be defeating. And so, you know, we're very obviously excited to be able to have these conversations in this iterative and new way. There is a palpability that has come across in a lot of these conversations. And I think part of that stems from the fact that just generally, you know, we're facing a moment in our world right now where the culture of humanity is being challenged. And that effectively is what arts and culture remedies, right? Is it creates an opportunity for us to see each other, for us to understand that we belong to each other, for us to understand the ways in which we engage and see and feel and hear, for our own self-care, but also for our community self-care. And so, you know, one of the things that we wanted to mention when we discussed culture is that we are in a very unique city. We're in a very global city, a city that has a lot of different identities and communities, neighborhoods, ways of expression, and that should be seen as a strength, right? It shouldn't be seen, and that's hard to identify, right? That's hard to like condense into like one thing and say that Seattle is this, when in fact Seattle is many things. Seattle is so many things, and that's a very beautiful, beautiful sentiment, and something that I think artists and organizations understand, and perhaps, you know, everybody else as well, but it's something that we really need to underscore and shine a light on. We're on the campus right now of Seattle Center. Biasedly is the host of the Northwest Folklife Festival, but also hosted 22 other cultural organizations through Festal that exist here and demonstrate and perform and showcase that culture and that community and that vibrancy and that dynamism. So what does it look like to have a city that has a culture that represents that soul, right? That represents that integrative spirit, and that leverages that as a strength and as a way to unify our communities. And so, you know, one of the things that we really wanted to take a look at was culture. And now I'm like losing my thing here. And so. What we wanted to make sure that we identified was publicly articulating a civic narrative that highlights arts and culture as essential to Seattle's recovery, identity, and future, and develop a unified, data-informed civic narrative that positions arts and culture as central to Seattle's identity. And I'll let Randy take it to were you going to talk about integration, or was I going to talk about it? And I'll let Randy seep into the next thing.
Thanks, Ben. So we talk a lot about breaking down silos, and we talk a lot about challenging binaries. And that's what we mean in many ways by integration. So for example, the creative economy is in the title of our working group, and the creative economy, in our estimation, is bigger than any one department. Yes, it's arts and culture. Yes, it's economic development. It's also Seattle Center. It's also transportation. It's also housing. It's also public safety. These are all functions of what it is required to have a thriving creative economy in a city like Seattle. So we really think an interdepartmental team or a sub-cabinet that can call from all those departments in order to come up with comprehensive strategies and also utilize the brilliance of all these volunteers on our 138 boards and commissions who bring their expertise and lived experience to this work. We have all these boards and commissions like the Film, Music, and Arts Commission who could also help inform an IDT like a creative economy interdepartmental team or sub-cabinet. We really think that we should reopen, and we heard this from folks, reopen the comp plan and think about arts, culture, and creative economy as a driver of growth over the next 10 or 20 years, make it embedded in the planning framework of the city, and align the emergent cultural planning efforts that are coming out of the Office of Arts and Culture into our comprehensive planning efforts. There's a lot of examples, including a couple here in Seattle, but around in Oakland, in Boston, in LA County, of cultural strategists or artists in residence embedding creative practitioners in other functions of city government. We think that is a strategy that should be explored and implemented because it's yielded incredible results in those other places and pretty incredible results here with the Department of Transportation. You know, it'd be great if we kept doing these town halls. It was really remarkable to see the response that we had when we had the first one a couple of weeks ago. Maybe we could do those quarterly, and we could check back on how we're doing against all these ideas that we're putting out there, all these lofty concepts. I think one other thing I just want to say is that the Office of Arts and Culture launched the Creative Advantage in 2013. It's an arts education partnership with Seattle Public Schools. It successfully restored arts education to every school in Seattle. That is possible in other ways, and it is possible to build on that success. So we don't just have to invent new stuff. We can also build on the stuff that's been working, and we can try to foster more inclusion and more collaboration. I'm going to jump to the top recommendation because I want to nuance this a little bit. This lives in the bucket of creative finance, and when we say remove the ad tax exemption for men's professional sports, that's really about, first of all, it's not a binary, right? Like sports and culture are both part of a civic fabric. I was in the streets of Pioneer Square the night the Seahawks won the Super Bowl, and I was in the streets of Pioneer Square for Art Walk. I am a proud season ticket holder of the Torrent, and I'm a proud amplifier of KEXP. We don't have to choose between the ways we love our city, right? We can love our city lots of different ways. So what this is about is that we already collect that admissions tax. This is not a punishment on the teams or a new tax imposed on the citizens of Seattle. This is something that's already collected, but it's trapped in the financing of the original stadiums, which were publicly financed many years ago. The stadiums have been paid off. Let's engage in a collaborative conversation about how that money could be used to create outcomes we all want to see. And maybe that's a conversation with the Sports Commission, and maybe that's a conversation with team ownership, and maybe that's a conversation with all the festival producers that we want to see making things happen from Northgate to South Park. But we think there's an opportunity there, and that's one of the creative interventions that's possible, along with this idea of a municipal bank, of creative bond financing. Municipal bonds can do a lot of interesting things, as I've learned in these last few months. And so let's think about not just more grant money to do more things and not more taxes that are competing with all the other needs that we have. Let's be creative about what we know exists. If we're gonna pay millions of dollars to paint over tags with gray paint, could we be investing that money instead in our creative and artist community to make those walls beautiful and to reflect the cultures of our city and our individual identities? Just as an example. So with that, I just want to say, we're not punishing the sports teams, we're inviting a collaboration, we're thinking about a way that we can all be proud of our city together, and that we can all work towards the sort of experience economy that we think can make this city an even better place.
I think we're the only team right now that's gotten the 3-minute warning. As a folklorist, I'll just say that there's a huge argument to be made that sports has a history in folklore and therefore arts and culture. The last thing we wanted to mention was our early success or quick win, and this speaks to the ideas of culture and integration. Developing a shared living platform that aggregates civic and cultural assets, that is supported by a civic and cultural narrative that can be unveiled through citywide celebrations of arts and culture throughout the city. We already have all the infrastructure. We have Langston, we have CD Forum, we have On the Block, we have Festal and Folklife. We have all the things that we can leverage and utilize to amplify the arts and culture of the city, especially as we come up to the World Cup, where literally thousands and thousands and thousands of people are going to be flocking our streets. So how do we leverage that and send them to the places that already exist through a platform that aggregates all that data as cultural assets? Thank you so much for the time, and hope you guys have a good day.
Opening our session on public safety, please welcome back Co-Chair Tiffany McCoy.
I don't know about you all, but like my body while they were talking was like getting really energized and like I want to be pumped up. So if you all just want to like shake it out, you're welcome to. Please do. Also, it is so clear how much you all love the city, and I just like deeply appreciate that. And like I know we can do better. So thank you for participating, and thank you also for lifting up a municipal bank there, Randy and team. I'm here again because our other co-chair, Quinn Pham, just want to lift her up, is not able to be here today. So I have the pleasure of also introducing our public safety policy work group and standing up for our values. First, to public safety. Public safety is about trust, coordination, and community well-being. During this transition process, we heard clearly that Seattle residents want safety systems that respond to their real needs, not just metrics. Metrics are important, but as long as if they do not inform our lives and actually have an impact, they really are just numbers on a paper. This means the right response at the right time by the right team, whether that's police, our care team, outreach workers, or crisis specialists. The transition process also reinforced that Seattle residents want clear information about safety protocols, city actions, and outcomes. Standing up for our values as a city means integrating our values into our policies, protocols, and funding decisions. If that doesn't translate into money, it is, again, just words or numbers on a paper. Public safety, community trust, immigrant protections, and equity are not separate priorities. They are all interconnected. I don't know about you all, but hearing from all of the work groups thus far, you are already hearing that cross-collaboration and everyone bringing up specific and certain themes over and over again. So if we embed our values into every action, we create a safer, fairer, and more resilient Seattle for everyone. First, you'll hear from our public safety co-leads, and that will be followed up by our Standing Up for Our Values co-leads. Thanks everyone for being here.
Presenting on neighborhood safety and community resources, here are public safety, parks, and well-being co-leads, Lisa Dugard and Dominique Davis.
Good morning. Thank you first to Uncommon Bridges for shepherding this octopus of an effort, to the departments and mayor's office staff who are here to listen, which really means so much. And to the mayor for setting this process in motion. It takes a truly brave elected official to start something like this, and it's not over, so, and I know you want that, so thank you for inviting everyone to organize and continue to put pressure on our leaders to make progress. Our committee was incredible. Asia Adam, Aaron Goodman, Reverend Robert Jeffrey, Gregory Joseph, and Lanisha Landry did an enormous amount of work, and we especially want to thank those who lent their wisdom and hard-won expertise to providing the insights that we used to make the recommendations that we're bringing forward. Many of them are here today, and it's super meaningful, so I see a number of you here, and I hope you see your words and proposals and suggestions in the materials. I will say in the process of synthesizing, a lot of crucial detail is lost, so if you see some things that don't look quite right in the posters, we're going to work to update those. But we have done our best to discern and synthesize some important themes that emerged from this work. The committee engaged in more than 60 substantive sessions, some individual interviews, but a lot of group meetings. Over 200 people participated. There were several surveys done, and Reverend Jeffrey is convening a ministers' summit on March 9th with the mayor, I believe. So that is still coming. A summary of some key findings. One of the strongest themes that emerged was that all effort and resources need to be shifted to methods of working to actually reduce harm that are effective in reducing harm. This applies across the board to the public impact of addiction and public drug use, people living in areas that are not meant for human habitation, the sale of goods in the illicit economy, domestic violence, gun violence. The theme is that very often what we fund is not actually well designed to reduce those harms, and approaches that are effective are very rarely well resourced. So there's a universal call to take these objectives seriously and move forward approaches that actually are known to reduce harm. No one in that entire sphere of engagement that we interviewed called for enforcement to be the primary strategy. But everyone who realized that enforcement is rarely the primary strategy insisted that the alternatives that we rely on be high quality, accountable, and impactful. And even though no one saw enforcement as the primary public safety strategy, almost everyone we spoke with did call for police to be present when they need to be to deter unlawful activity, including hate crimes and federal abuses, and to perform the functions that only they can. We have to have a balance with police and community partners all performing their parts of the division of labor with urgency, skill, and cultural humility. Restoring SPD's detective ranks and the dedicated protection order service capacity that they used to have are both key, as is the overall staffing level of SPD, so they can do the pieces only they can do. We do want to note a very strong feeling that emerged that more needs to be done to foster cultural affinity with and understanding of the East African community at SPD. This goes back many years, and it needs priority attention. And so that SPD can do what only they can do, it's essential that other public order and well-being issues be handled by the care department rather than by sworn police officers. The Seattle Police Officers Guild contract barriers to care deployment now preclude care responders from being deployed primarily for a wide range of issues that the public has been told care is for, including issues of drug use, drug possession, encampments, situations that could give rise to civil commitment, basically everything that if you think of the care department and you thought that's what they were there to do, there are barriers to care deploying in response to those issues based in the SPOG contract. We need a creative strategy so that the dedicated workers in this civilian public safety department, which is an emerging national best practice, can do what the public has been told it will do. Also, we need to level up our community violence intervention approach and redesign homelessness response in a variety of ways. We resisted the call to lift up one single most critical recommendation because all of the recommendations in this area are actually quite specific, and the loss of specificity, kind of unifying something to the point that it's meaningless, didn't seem to serve. But the theme that's on the slide is a good summary of what we found. We did want to lift up Erin Goodman, I don't know if she's here today, did suggest a restoration of the city directory, the city employee directory, and every time she said that, it got a lot of applause. So it's not a public safety strategy, but just a good government one. We have two early wins, turning to Dom for the first.
Hello, and thank you, Mayor. This has been an awesome experience, and it's just beginning. We're not stopping. So, due to the situation that we had, the tragedy that we had down in the Rainier Beach corridor a few weeks back, which I'm sure pretty much everybody's aware of, I kind of shifted my vision and focus to address our young people in our community, especially in our schools. We do a lot of work in the schools. There's a lot of organizations doing some really good work in the schools, and we are underfunded, and we do need to build more capacity to be more preventive and more proactive to be ahead of these kind of situations. But the voices that I'm hearing in the early wins, which I should jump to, the early win is the fact that all hands are on deck. The mayor's office, the sheriff's department, SPD, Metro, a lot of people have came together to pull their capacity into one area. And we're in that Rainier Beach corridor every day, 5 days a week. That's a win on the back of a tragedy. But I also want to say we can count it as a win if we could take that same energy and that same capacity that we built together and brought our organizations, government organizations, community-based organizations together to be in that space to raise the awareness of safety and be more aggressive in it, and to other schools areas. The Central District is the #1 priority that we should be focusing on next, right? We should be over by Garfield and Washington Middle School. And so I count that as a win. I count that as a win because we see what it looks like now. When all of our antennas go up, and now all of us are going, okay, we got to do something now. We're putting together a 90-day plan with the mayor's office, very strategically to build more capacity, but I do want to say we also have to start putting the focus on the north end schools also, right? We don't want to wait until another tragedy happens. We want to go ahead and be proactive and preventive. So I count that as a win, Mayor, I do. And I'm going to keep focusing on another topic is we have to worry about bringing ourselves together, coming together and collaborating on the ICE situation, right? That ICE situation can be detrimental if we're not ready for it. And we need to know what side of the line does the city, the county, law enforcement stand on. Are they standing on the side of the line with community, or are they standing on the side of the line with the feds, right? What does that look like for us? So then the community knows how we need to prepare to be ready for whatever can happen, right?
And the other early win that we wanted to lift up is in the realm of domestic violence. I know I happened to walk in here with two people who are domestic violence survivors. I know there are many others in the room. I myself have had that experience. As a public defender, it just stunned me that people who are accused of domestic violence and are prosecuted in court are ordered to do domestic violence treatment that everyone knows is not only ineffective, but there's research to indicate that that people who go through it actually tend to have a higher risk of reoffense than those who don't. So why are we doing this? And this recommendation is one that I wanted to lift up because it so perfectly illustrates all effort and all funding should go to strategies that actually reduce the harm. That's what it means to take harm seriously, not to do things for the sake of doing them, but to hold ourselves and our governmental efforts accountable for actually achieving that improvement. So out of these interviews emerged a remarkable consensus from everyone from prosecutors to survivor services advocates, all the way to public defenders and abolitionists, finding that there's a new approach that was innovated at the VA called Strength at Home, that defendants who are ordered to participate in it as the result of court involvement find that it is super meaningful. It's a great experience for them. It allows families to, in many instances, remain together in a healthier future. Families do remain together, but just often with ongoing dynamics that are super harmful. This seems to change that. And as our abolitionist respondents pointed out, this resource should also be made available to individuals without the need to have the person commit a crime, be arrested, be charged with a crime. Let families reach out for help before it gets to that point. So, Strength at Home. Thank you so much.
Discussing civil rights and equity initiatives, please welcome co-leads Jalen Scott and Roxana Naruzzi.
Good morning, everyone. What an honor it is to be here. Jalen and I are so honored to have been able to lead this committee, particularly at a time where there is so much deep fear facing the communities that Jalen and I represent. Thank you, Mayor Wilson, for your leadership, for pulling us all together. Thank you to the Uncommon Bridges team. We also want to thank our incredible committee policy participants, Cadman, Abdi, Mubarak, Faduma, and Deontay. Our group did incredible work over the last few months to pull together these recommendations and to talk to so many folks from across the city. I want to say a little bit about our engagements. We focus deeply on talking directly to the immigrant, Black, and LGBTQ communities to ensure that the communities that are furthest from opportunity, that are facing the deepest fears, are really centered in this process and that we get to hear directly from them. And we did that in a couple different ways. One, many of us had one-to-one conversations. We also met with existing rapid response infrastructure and coalitions to ask what is already in place and what are the opportunities to expand and build on the incredible community work that has already been done. We also put out a survey to many of the service providers across the city to give input into what the city could be doing to amplify current efforts with additional funding. And finally, we held a town hall, also sold out, as I've heard, with over 250 people, folks really eager to come together. And I want to turn it to Jalen to share a little bit about one of the sentiments that came out of that town hall that has really grounded these recommendations before we jump in.
It's great to be with you this morning. The town hall, 250, I think, folks showed up, and I would like to say that's because of our organizing, but it really was because someone leaked a story that Mayor Wilson was going to be there, but it worked.
We'll take credit for it.
We will take credit for it. The sentiment of fear and safety was a shared one at this town hall. Immigrant communities and transgender communities who were at the town hall, who are here today, shared their stories. It became evident to everyone that there was a shared concern. Feds labeling us as terrorists, criminalization of our people, displacement of our folks with a refugee crisis, both in trans communities and in immigrant communities. It was a space that I have never experienced, and it was a space where we had East African community, Latino, Latina community, trans community, talking with each other, crying with each other, listening to each other. Those are the spaces that we need to be in right now if we're actually going to stand up for our values and resist federal threats. It was clear that what they wanted said is that Seattle has an obligation, and I believe Mayor Wilson has said this, to use its power to protect all refugees who find home in this city.
Thank you, Jalen. And that sentiment of, as we move into the policy recommendations of the relationship, the rebuilding of trust, the connection between city government and community is essential to how we will lead through this very, very difficult moment where so many folks are terrified, are scared to go to the grocery store, to pick up their kids from daycare every day. And the other thing that really undergirds our recommendations is that the city has an opportunity to not only defend and protect, but to be a model for the rest of the country of what it looks like to embrace the diversity of our communities. What we heard from all the leaders here, what we know is good for immigrants, trans people of color, is what's good for everyone. And so the recommendations around housing, transportation, childcare, economic mobility, those are things that we can invest in an even deeper way for the communities most under threat, and that has to be a North Star for the city. We also want to move a bit to what are some of the direct policy recommendations that we heard through our conversations. Number one is building on what Jalen said, really using the power of the city to put in as many protections as possible and to separate federal immigration enforcement from local police and the city's everyday, day-to-day agenda. This looks like training for SPD, but all city departments around the law in Washington state. It is law that local and state law enforcement cannot collaborate with ICE and Customs and Border Patrol, but we believe that there is more that can be done in the city that goes beyond the floor of what the law is. And a lot of that includes some policies, but it really does include training and a culture in the city of the city's staff and police force are there to protect residents and not to assist in immigration enforcement. And we'll talk a little bit about what's already happened and some early wins. I also want to lift up that it's not just immigration enforcement, it is also the anti-immigrant sentiment that is creating a lot of fear in the communities that we've spoken with. We heard quite a bit from, in particular, the East African community about some emboldened vigilante citizen journalists, people who are threatened sometimes daily on their front porches for going about their lives. And one of the clear recommendations we heard is more training for city staff and SPD in how to respond to those incidents, setting up a clear process to report hate crimes, prosecute hate crimes, and in particular, have an orientation to how we protect people who feel fear, not only when they are encountering ICE and any kind of immigration enforcement, but also when they're encountering hate crimes and hate generally out there in the community. The other thing we heard a lot about is the opportunity to allocate resources to the growing rapid response infrastructure in the city. We've been so inspired and heard from hundreds of folks, both the rapid response that has been set up through existing organizations, but also through everyday people coming together, creating their infrastructure, figuring out how they're going to support kids in their local school and families in their local schools. And there's an opportunity for the city to contribute to that, to fund that in a really clear and supportive way, and to use some of the money that was allocated to the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs to beef up legal supports, rapid response, and mutual aid for families that are impacted by immigration enforcement. I'll switch spots with you.
There was a recommendation, particularly for an office, well, an expanded Office of Immigration and Refugee Affairs, a regional office that can work with some of the other local jurisdictions more collaboratively. And in addition to that, thinking about the transgender, the threats to transgender people, an office for LGBTQ affairs, and a resource liaison so that folks who land here and the people that exist here anyway can figure out how to navigate what the access to rapid response resources. There's also the desire on surveillance and coordination to suspend the use of ALPR and closed-circuit television to really address the concerns about tracking and auditing. The community is not feeling satisfied with the current answers to the question of are they secure from federal threats through CCTV recordings and through license plate readers.
And just to highlight that the ending of surveillance is about community safety and trust, and it's also deeply connected to the issues of immigration and making sure that we close every single loophole that federal agents can access people's information. So we really want to make sure that what we heard from the community in almost every conversation, that doing an audit of data, how data is tracked and shared in the city, what task force SPD is sitting at the table with, in which data and information can be shared in terms of immigration and tracking of people for the purposes of immigration enforcement, came up over and over and over again. So the issue of surveillance is both about safety and about, it's an immigration issue. We want to lift up some early wins. We were so excited and proud to see the executive order that was released, I think, 2 weeks ago now. I will venture to say that it is one of the strongest in the country in terms of, in terms of protections for immigrants, making it very clear the role of local law enforcement, also inviting small businesses to participate in protecting their spaces and putting some additional barriers up to not allow immigration enforcement to access properties. And the other really groundbreaking piece of the executive order was actually giving clear direction to SPD what they are to do if they are to come in contact and actually be called to a scene where someone is being detained because of immigration status. This is groundbreaking. It will actually shift the tenor of the whole country if it is done well, and can assist potentially in documenting a lot of human rights abuses that we know and we all see are happening both here and across the country. So really grateful for that. It's a huge step, and we want to emphasize the importance of now the implementation of that. Ensuring that the training actually happens, that it's being evaluated consistently, and that the protocols in terms of how city government is communicating directly with community-based organizations who are on the ground responding to these threats, that continues to be refined and built out as we learn more every day.
I think we'll close just in saying that we didn't say this as an early win, but the access, it really feels like unparalleled access to certain communities of color, LGBTQ communities of color, folks who are feeling like they are in crisis right now, finding any opportunity at all of our town halls, with the mayor's office directly, being listened to and heard about their deep concerns. This is the beginning of us moving together as a city. It's the beginning of us moving together as a movement to being a beacon on the hill for the rest of the country. And that is an early win because we have started the work, and I'm very thankful to the transition team, to Mayor Wilson for setting this process up. That is a win. We're talking to each other, and we weren't talking like this 6 months ago, but we are now, and we're gonna get there. Thank you so much.
And now for our final policy session on civic identity and major initiatives, please welcome co-chair Brian Surratt.
Good morning. We still awake? We still here? If Jalen's last comments didn't get you going, I don't know what will, because it's funny, we were joking earlier this morning with a few folks around, okay, are we done transitioning? Are we done? Are we done? Are we ready to do the work? And I think part of the reality is we're always transitioning. We're always moving. We're always trying to be as responsive as possible to the needs of today and meeting the moment. And Jalen, what you laid out is a start. And I'm here to kind of introduce our final session around civic narrative, and I think what you heard today, this morning, was part of our story, was part of our civic narrative. Civic narrative is not some symbolic, abstract thing. It is collectively how we think about ourselves. It's collectively how do we love our neighbors, collectively how we try to make sure that whatever role you have, whether you're whether you're a student, whether you're a business owner, a person in government, what is your role in making sure that this community is better and again, meets the moment. We all love this city. Some were born here, some moved here from all corners of the world, but we all have chosen to make Seattle home, and we love it differently. We may not always agree on everything about what we can do to make this city better, but it's grounded in that deep love for this place. And that's, for me, what civic identity is how do we care for this place, and how do we talk about our place to each other and to the rest of the world. And I'm really proud of this transition committee and just overwhelmed with the amount of work. This wasn't some a ceremonial transition team. We told y'all at the beginning that this was not going to be your grandma's or granddaddy's transition committee. This was about work, and you have delivered to us a book of ideas and thoughts and reflections of how to make our city better. And what we found through the dialogue and your work in helping push what it means to be a resident of Seattle, what it means to make this city better, there are some through lines. We talked about affordability, safety, belonging, opportunity, and accountability. The work going forward is clear. We need to be a city that listens, we need to be a city that learns, and we need to be a city that acts. That is what good government is. That is what being in tune with our sense of community really is grounded in. And our commitment to all of you who's participating in this transition process is that we're going to be in partnership with you. Again, we may not always agree with everything, timing, all those pieces, but our commitment is to be transparent and to work in community and in constant conversation with everyone. So 55 days in, a lot of work to do, and I'm glad to do it with you all. Thank you.
To discuss public engagement and cross-sector collaboration, here are Civic Narrative and Major Initiatives co-leads, Alex Huston and Joy Shigaki.
Well, it's always good to go last. But in some ways, the civic narrative piece sort of is wrapping up what Brian had sort of set up, and the work that's been done by people on this stage and thousands of other people who chose to lean in and bring their voices to this process. So many thanks to the mayor, to the talented Uncommon Bridges team who really pushed us as volunteers, though, to ask the question of how are we going out to really listen at a very, very deep level in order to really lean into what's best and what to improve, to push for care and true belonging and action in the city, and I think that really has centered our work. I want to acknowledge members of our policy team, Liliana Ballesteros, Dr. Anna Cauce, Andrea Capain-Sanders, Leo Flor, and Mari Horita, who worked hard to really reach out to the grass tops and grassroots. I think that was our obligation to keep pushing as hard as possible. And then you heard a lot of through lines of civic narrative around the arts and culture group, but also civic narrative when it comes to really how do you trust in government, what do you believe in the city, and what action actually is going to continue to help you deepen that belief in a narrative about our town.
Yes, thank you. When you ask people about what they believe about the city of Seattle, it is not hard to get them to talk about this. People, overwhelmingly, the people that we spoke to, either in one-on-ones, in surveys, in small group discussions with grass tops and grassroots organizations, with community voices, and of course throughout the other transition committees, care very deeply about the city of Seattle, and their opinions are well-forged. People love being here. They choose to be here. They choose to stay here, oftentimes when it's harder to be here than other places because of some of the affordability issues that you've heard and other things. And they want it to be a wonderful place. So this was a wonderful opportunity to bring people together, and we have 5 key themes that we are gonna trade off sharing with you about that.
So the first one is about a shared North Star, this idea of a consistent civic narrative that across all public communications positions the city as a place of belonging and stewardship and opportunity. But in that, we have to acknowledge the structural inequities, displacement, and historic exclusion that has happened too in Seattle. But in that, you can pair it with power sharing, co-creation, and rooted in lived experience, which again is what you're hearing across many of the policy groups today. But embedded in the civic narrative is public infrastructure, right? Wayfinding, parks, transit, and cultural spaces that connect daily civic life to a shared story of place. So that begins to ground that first recommendation.
The second one is around our cultural and public realm as our civic infrastructure. The city owns many of the pieces of the infrastructure of social connection, and people love these places and are cheering for them. So the first is to treat our essential civic infrastructure as something that is both known to be valued, but is valuable. And so we want to make the places and the spaces that make us as invested in and as high quality as the people who are coming to use them and build memories together. You heard people speak here to the idea of getting to a city of yes. That when folks are coming out and wanting to create opportunities for people to come together, that we move away from regulating and into cultivating that, making that easier for people to be able to do so. The idea that every place can be a third place, that our transit stations and our neighborhood centers and our everyday gathering places can be as lovely and wonderful to be as any privatized space, and in fact should be more so. The idea that you may have heard referencing people like Eric Kleinberg and the idea of palaces for the people. Nothing is too good for everyday people in the city of Seattle. Yes, you could share that. And that access matters, right? That we have these incredible opportunities, these cultural institutions and the professional sports teams, but they are only as good as your ability to participate in them. And so we want to make sure that these places, these institutions are creating civic experiences that are rooted in local identity, but that everyone has a chance to participate.
The third area is getting the basics right. We heard a lot about if we're going to move a narrative forward, we have to be very, very focused on quality of life for everyone. Quality of life improvements of cleanliness, of safety, of maintenance, so that there's a commitment and belief that basic services builds that civic trust and long-term transformation of our city, right? That's how government can do it best, but don't get away from the basics. And breaking down silos, we heard that a little bit about trying to accelerate visible deliveries of neighborhood improvements, right? How do you make sure that we actually make progress and make it easier to make that happen? Tying large-scale initiatives in housing and arts and infrastructure to tangible lived experience outcomes across neighborhoods. So again, thinking more at a high level and really an integrated model instead of things, again, only within their respective buckets. And some of that too is about monitoring. We heard a lot about tell the story of what's working and communicate consistently. So this one is really about monitoring, consistently communicating results, right? Linking small wins to the city's broader initiatives, which really starts building greater trust and belief that progress is being made.
The fourth conversation was about the beautiful, wonderful, vibrant downtown Seattle and its bright future. So we want downtown. Downtown's an important place where people come to do commerce and to work, but it is so much more than that. Downtown, we want to see strategies of mixed use, of lived experience, housing, public space, cultural venues, that downtown should be a place for everyone to do everything. The second is around using opportunities. Like, I don't know if you guys have heard, but there's going to be a big soccer game here this summer. That when opportunities like this come to make a splash, that we want to make sure that that splash makes a lasting benefit for folks. Of course, downtown is a wonderful place to be, but it's not the only neighborhood that matters to people. And so we want to make sure that yes, that as we're thinking about investments in downtown, we're matching that with equitable levels of investment in other places that really matter to people. And that we make sure that downtown is tended to in its around anti-displacement protections and community ownership pathways, that downtown should not just be a neighborhood for the people who have the most and the people who have the least. That everybody should be able to find a place to make a home and a life in the city of Seattle and its downtown.
And the last recommendation is, oh, was that it? Let's see, sorry.
Next page.
Oh, next page. Trust, accountability, and civic participation. Again, a through line and a question that, and a statement that was made really across a lot of the conversations that we had, that it's really about institutionalizing co-governance models that give community real decision-making power and authority rather than advisory ones, right? Part of that is increasing transparency, through public dashboards, tracking capital projects, parks, cultural investments. Again, how do you open up that conversation for people to see really where progress is being made or where the challenges are? Government can't do everything well, but government can also be really modeling how to best show that learning and be able to show what they're doing to reset and learn. And rebuilding neighborhood engagement. We know that that's an important part, again, to be able to make sure that there's a level of local decisions happening across the city, right, across neighborhoods. And that civic participation pathways can exist in a lot of different ways. Boards, commissions, participatory budgeting, leadership apprentices, and what we heard is a lot of other invitations to keep being involved in government. I think this process has been a reminder of that. How do you invite people into effective governance is participation in the city of Seattle, and not just a one and done, but a real intentional, authentic invitation for transparency, for conversation, for building trust.
So now we want to future cast our early wins. So now it is February 24th. Is that what day it is? It's February 24th, 2027. And we're reporting back to you the things that have been the early wins based on these recommendations.
So one of the first is that we've been hosting service days across the city with tens of thousands of residents coming out to really show civic pride, participation, and connection to one another and care for community.
We've used our sub-area planning efforts to recruit people into processes for building trust, accountability, and ongoing civic participation efforts, and created neighborhood civic labs across the city's regional centers.
We've held at least 6 stakeholder roundtables connecting to transition priority recommendations to really advance the work and co-design locally for improvements and programs.
We've talked to Sound Transit and others about piloting public art activations in high visibility transportation corridors and hubs and spaces. This is bringing a rich connection to local artists and animating important places.
People are experiencing better hours and more accessible clean restrooms throughout the city. Hey, holla. So this is real, this is seen, this is experienced, right? Everyday things, making it available for the public.
And we're continuing to make progress and make real visible improvements in downtown and beyond through sub-area planning this year and into next.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For final reflections on the transition and a look at what's next for Seattle, please welcome back Mayor Katie Wilson.
Okay, I'm going to keep this short because y'all have been sitting there for a long time. This is really exciting. As I'm sitting there listening to recommendations, listening to themes and early wins, I'm just really inspired and excited by what I think we're going to be able to accomplish together both this year and over the next 4 years. I did notice that there were some pretty massive ambitions tucked into some of those quote-unquote early wins. So I'll just say, thank you for your faith in me and my administration to move mountains. We'll see how it goes. But no, really, I think part of what is both exciting and a little bit daunting about this process and what you all have created out of it is just the scope, from the very kind of like high level themes, but down to the very detailed, like here are really specific things that we can do to make our city better. And I just want to re-emphasize what Andrés said at the beginning, which is that we have this, 30-page transition recommendations document, but that is kind of the tip of the iceberg. And the iceberg is, all of the interviews and conversations and processes and all of the documents that came out of that, which have a lot more detail into the things that all of the advisors who participated in this process believe can make a difference in our city. And we have that information too, and we will be using it in the months and the years ahead. So just want to express really profound gratitude for everyone who has poured their heart and soul and time and energy into this process. We are going to take this, the outcome of this process very seriously, and also just to reiterate that this is not the end. This is really a way station. This is we're still at the beginning, and we are going to be re-engaging with you all as we are beginning to put these recommendations into action. We are going to be checking back at various points and really marking our progress. Right? We want this, this document that has come out of this to be something that we come back to again and again, and we can say, like, look, here's where we've made progress. Here's maybe where we're still working on something. So. Thank you. This is your city, and also keep the pressure on, right? I expect all of you to hold me and my administration accountable as we do this work in the years ahead. So thank you very much.
To conclude our program with a special spoken word performance titled Climate, please welcome Josie Ellis and Harlem Yarborough.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Harlem Yarborough.
My name's Josie Ellis.
And we're alumni from the spoken word cohort of Seattle Theater Group's Elevate. And today we'll be doing a poem. Sorry. And today we'll be doing a poem for you titled The Climate. My people came here in chains, binded together with metal hands and feet in cuffs. Much like today, my people are still in cuffs. My ancestors came here in chains.
I was born in a land built from bones where the soil don't just grow crops, it grows contradictions.
My people came here in chains, binded together with steel. You still our culture. You want to be black until it's actually time to be black. We are not immigrants.
My mama told me, remember your roots, even if they try and pull them up, and baby, they tried.
We are a stolen kingdom. You forced us here on boats and then hung us from ropes.
Ripped them out like weeds, labeled other, like not from here, like threats. But my skin has been politicized too long since the sun kissed it.
Strange fruit isn't the only thing that's strange. You stole us to work, but not in our professions. You made us slaves, enslaved, but from the shores of another place we came. We are not immigrants.
I stand with the mothers holding hands at borders, and the sisters breathing resistance into their hair. Black and female, double-checked by TSA and society. I walk through America knowing I owe it nothing, but it acts like I owe it everything. 2026, and we're still building walls, like truth can't climb, like hope can't swim, like people don't cross borders with babies on their backs.
So I fear your textbooks are wrong. Forced immigrant doesn't cover the immense pain and suffering my people went through. We marched into the waters because dying was better than living through something forced. You whipped, stole, and killed us with no remorse. This country is built on black backs, and the white man found freedom in that.
No, freedom is a brand name now. Trademark sold on red hats and legislated through fear on their backs just for a shot at breathing free. But I say we gotta protect our borders, but nobody protected mine. Redlined and confined, they drew borders around my block, told me who could live here, love here, learn here. It's the brown ones they fear the most, the ones who pray in languages this country refuses to translate, the ones whose stories aren't in textbooks but tattooed on forearms and whispered across deserts. They look at me and say, "You should understand, you're black."
While we're still held here in bondage, you called us stupid because we couldn't read and said we didn't have any manners but fed us pig's feet. Massa was the common word around the fields. The only name other than God's that we cried out until Mother Harriet found a way out. We are not immigrants. I cannot stress it enough. Have we ever been free?
As if oppression is a passport. We all stamp in silence, as if liberation ain't tied to theirs. But I know freedom ain't pie. More for them don't mean less for me. I stand with the mothers holding hands at borders and sisters braiding resistance into their hair.
We've been in bondage since we've arrived and thrived. You lied. Even if you get rid of DEI, we can't die. I did not come here in chains. And neither should have my people, because this country is built on black backs and the white man found freedom in that we are not immigrants.
I walk with the brothers who cross fences and find cages. I speak for the babies who learn detention before dream. And I pray not for the wall to fall, but for a system to crack so light can leak through. The country loves to ask me, where am I really from? But I ask it, where is it going? Because if justice is the destination, we're driving in circles. But I'm still here, we're still here, and we're gonna stay. Unapologetically black, unrelentingly bold, unbordered in soul. Oh, what if because even if they chained our wrists, they could never chain our togetherness. We survived by holding each other up, building community where they tried to build cages.
Thank you.
A round of applause. And now, to close our event, please welcome back to the stage Transition Director Andrés Mantilla.
All right. How's everybody feeling? Thank you. Another round of applause for Josie and Harlem. Thank you again also to Forrest Williams, who joined us in the morning to provide some music during the social hour. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, transition team. Mayor, as I was listening to the engagement reports, I think I might have given you the 1,500 number might have been low in terms of engagement here. So very, very grateful to all the work that's taken place. You know, at the core of this work, as we kind of close this down and we look at the packet that, again, you have the QR code, it's on the screen here. You have the summaries at the back, and you have this vast amount of feedback, knowledge, community voice that we've collected through this process. You know, beyond policies, programs, priorities, what excited me about this approach, and what I want to really be thankful to the mayor, is that this approach was about, at the end of the day, building community, building shared and safe spaces, not reinventing the wheel, not going back to community and asking for the 20th, 50th time, what are your priorities, but how do we get to action? How do we listen and get to action? So as we leave this event, and as we close this transition, and as we commit to ongoing conversations, I really encourage you to continue that momentum, build on those relationships, build on those community connections that you've made, and knowing that it will take all of us to implement this agenda, and it will take all of us to achieve these early wins. So thank you so much. Thank you to the Uncommon Bridges team. Thank you to you all for coming here today, and we are adjourned. Thanks so much.